Welcome to Across Africa, a weekly look at stories from across the continent. I'm Georgia Calvin-Smith, and this week, as Africa's cultural heavyweights gather in Lagos for its 13th iconic Fashion Week, a unique study by UN cultural investigators line Africa up at the forefront of future fashion around the world, both as an economic driver and a trendsetter. Also, the March of Progress in Dakar tramples over the city's green spaces. There are warnings that a building boom in the Senegalese capital comes with an environmental and psychological toll for people living there. And as the numbers of African penguins continue to plummet, scientists are warning that in a little over a decade, there may not be enough left to survive in the wild. Conservationists in Cape Town are trying to rally communities to help stave off that grim fate. But first, if you know, you know. And those in the know say that Africa will increasingly pull ahead as it drives global fashion forward. A new UN report has broken down the numbers of the African fashion sector and laid bare its phenomenal impact. From the sourcing of materials used in haute couture and high street pieces around the world to setting the aesthetics that make or break trends, acknowledgement of the continent's creative clout can't be discounted by anyone serious about the future of the industry, wherever they hail from. I'm joined now by Omuyemi Akarele, the founder of Lagos Fashion Week, who's kindly squeezed us in amidst the frenzy. Omuyemi, first of all, give us a bit of an overview of what for you were the main takeaways from that UN report into the African fashion industry.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me. I think for me, fundamentally, the report speaks to our ethos at Star House Proud's Lagos Fashion Week, and we see community as the starting point of the creative process. Their collaborative approach in reaching out to a variety of stakeholders across the continent speaks to, what we believe the future of fashion anywhere in the world should be, which is how to bring together a community of people through a collaborative process to sort of figure out the way forward. So it doesn't just look at challenges, it looks at the opportunities, and it does that through a wider lens of different stakeholders across the value chain. So you have designers, but at the same time you have people who invest in fashion on the continent. You have retailers, you have textile designers. So I think that's always a useful tool to be able to problem solve, when you co-curate, when you bring together a diverse group of people to be able to, so it speaks to that. And one thing that's also predominant across that is, the textile and apparel industry across Africa, when functioning effectively, has the potential to create, huge potentials for socioeconomic development across Africa. And the people who stand to gain the most from this are definitely women and youth, which when you also tie that within a wider conversation around the need to ensure that we achieve the SDG goals for 2030, it begins to paint a wider picture of, just how valuable the role of textile and apparel sector is within Africa.
So you've been running Lagos Fashion Week for 13 years now. Have you seen much of a change in terms of the international attention that the gathering has attracted over that time?
So this question is quite interesting because when Lagos Fashion Week launched in 2011, we had the attention of international media as well. British Vogue and a couple of big editorial magazines, to name a few, so consistently, I think consistently there's been support from the international audience. I think the challenge has always been, the gaze that they're looking at it from. If there's international press or international awareness, and you continue to look at the continent and our fashion and art scene or our creative value chain, you continue to gaze at it through the eyes from a trend-led approach. Instead of, from that perspective of, wow, this is who they are, this is what they've been doing, this is what we've done for years, and this is what we're always going to be doing. It's never really going to achieve that purpose. So while, yes, there's been there's been a wider interest, not just in fashion, but in our music, in film industry, whether Nollywood or across Africa, the digital footprint. So all of that's also contributed significantly.
Some welcome and growing attention to some of the continent's creative capital there. Omiyemi, thank you so much for making the time to speak to us and giving us some of the insight into those really positive figures from that UN report looking at Africa's creative clout, particularly in the fashion industry around the world. Now, Dakar is going through a major construction boom with high-rise towers popping up across the Senegalese capital. While the changes deliver much-needed housing, the buildings are unrelentingly erasing the few green spaces left in the city. Sam Bradpiece has more.
This new high-rise is one of the largest in Dakar. Nestled between two hills in the Senegalese capital, the Mamel Tower cost the equivalent of more than 60 million euros, drawn from public and private funds. It'll mainly be used for office space. Taslim's company won the contract to build it.
This building responds to a demand for quality offices. We don't have enough of them. Thanks to the drive to make Senegal more attractive, more and more international actors are coming. Local businesses are also looking for quality office spaces. Instead of renting a villa, it's better for them to move to towers like this one, where there are professionals with whom they can work and create.
The construction sector is booming and sky rises are reaching ever higher across the city. Today, the peninsula around central Dakar looks like a giant construction site. There is currently just 1 square metre of green space for every resident in the capital, far below the 15 square metre minimum recommended by the WHO.
People who haven't visited Senegal in 20 years now barely recognize the city.
Conservationists warn that the removal of Dakar's trees also affects quality of life.
Unfortunately, all families have seen people impacted by the lack of trees. They get respiratory illnesses, asthma, high blood pressure. It worries us a lot, especially when we think about future generations. What will we leave for them, for our children? A city without trees, a city without a soul, a city covered in concrete.
One of Mamadou Sakho's petitions has seen the Senegalese government pledge to build a 10-hectare city centre park. The environmentalist says the gesture is still not enough to compensate for what's been lost.
Now, African penguins have become one of the most fondly appreciated aspects of life in Cape Town. Colonies used to throng islands off the coast of Namibia and South Africa. But today, scientists warn that so few are left that by 2035, the now endangered birds won't be able to survive in the wild. Conservationists are trying to get Cape Town communities to rally behind their efforts to boost the numbers of their flightless neighbours. Take a look.
Out on the streets in what could be a last-ditch attempt to save an iconic animal, supporters gathered to march in Simonstown, close to the largest African penguin colony in the Western Cape. The African penguin is endangered, and activists and experts warn that their very existence is in peril.
I know we've got those stats of in the next 12 years they're going to go functionally extinct. I can't imagine South Africa without our African penguin. It's our penguin. We take pride in having one species that occurs here.
Today, only small penguin numbers gather on the region's beaches. It is estimated that by 2035 there won't be enough penguin pairs for the species to reproduce. Scientists blame commercial fishing. Overfishing results in a disruption to habitats, and penguins simply don't have enough fish to eat. Colonies are also suffering from extreme weather. In this rehabilitation centre in Cape Town, distressed penguins are brought in every day. This group's nests were destroyed by floods in September when the chicks could not yet swim. Without human intervention, they wouldn't have survived. They will be released in a few weeks. The number of penguins needing assistance is increasing.
So we've admitted 260 chicks this year. Our admissions are due to malnutrition, emaciation, or severe weather conditions.
Human behaviour are also to blame. The Two Oceans Aquarium in Cape Town spearheads a campaign aiming at awareness and education on public behaviour at penguin sites.
We need to educate people, and we want to teach people as much as we can about what is happening out in the water and what people are able to do to help save the African penguin.
A century ago, over 1 million African penguins swam in the waters of southern Africa. It is estimated that there are now fewer than 50,000.
Well, that's it for Across Africa. For now, thanks very much for joining us. Do so again if you can. Till then, take care.